we really wanted to make sure people understood what these sessions are and are not. And so we're just going to be very explicit about that right now. This is really important. What we're doing in these rooms together is how we would, expect ourselves to carry our relationships back out into the world. This is our first practice together. And so we want to make it very clear and really emphasize what is okay and what isn't okay for that particular reason.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, that we want to begin to build the skills.
Yeah.
So that when we interact with people, we don't find ourselves surrounded by always the same kinds of people, which is often most like us, right? We want to be able to engage in such a way that we can keep our discomfort in check enough that people can show up in their full truth. But people are not going to be able to trust us to show up in their full truth if we cannot handle the discomfort of whatever their reality is.
Yeah.
Well, just specifically that because this is an inward focused series of events, right? Series of forums that we're doing, that we are coming to it from a place of acceptance and creating a space for us to respond compassionately to the requests that people of color have put before us, which is to be included differently than our efforts have resulted in so far, and specifically by dismantling racism that they can see and feel is a part of our organizations.
Yes.
So we are not coming here to dispute this goal, right?
Yes.
We're not saying whether that is true or not true. We are accepting that this is true internally. And we know that it is because it's happening external, and we are not separate from, if Black Lives Matter and things like this are happening in the world around us, then it is also happening in our midst. So we are accepting that. So with that in mind, what is okay is to have, and take space to process collectively and individually the resistance that comes up for us when we think about that notion of dismantling racism within our organization. And all of that, the fact that it's there.
Yeah.
Right? And then, okay, it's there and it's been in my midst, and now I need to address this. It is not a place to discuss whether racism is a thing or not. The CUC has long ago started on this journey of dismantling racism and colonialism. We know this is a thing. So within our spaces, we are not going to, these forums, we are not going to be focusing then on whether this is true or not.
Yeah. So it's not okay to argue
whether
or not we are racists.
Right.
Or whether or not there is a need to do this at all. It is not okay to do that.
No, not in this space. You can do it in some other space, but not in this space. This space is for us to start to begin to work through what this all means, right? So it is a space then to be vulnerable. It is okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to not know. It's okay to feel awkward, to feel exposed, to feel all of the things that happen when we step into a space that is unfamiliar. It is not okay to dominate the airspace, to steer people away from certain conversations so that one or more of us feel less vulnerable, or to kind of monopolize airtime so that the conversations stay on the things that we do feel less vulnerable about when we talk about it. So those are not okay behaviors, and they will be called out.
I would say it's okay to recognize the urge to do that, but it is not okay to follow through on it.
And we do want to encourage, very much, to notice that, hey, right now, when I was listening, I switched into this other mode where I thought about what I would say.
Yeah.
Notice that. Okay,
Yeah.
why would you want, and it could be that, there's something coming through you and it's, a benefit to the group because it leads us to greater vulnerability, in which case share that. Right. But if it comes up and you notice it and you go, hey, if I shared that, I noticed in myself, it would lead us away from greater vulnerability, right? Or lead us into a place that feels more familiar, more comfortable.
And it might hurt people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It is also a space to come to terms with the pain that we've caused people.
Yeah.
So it could be within our congregational or grassroots communities. It could be there, or it could also be in this whole process since May. Coming to terms with the fact that regardless of your perspectives on it, harsh words might have been spoken, judgments might have been laid, ultimatums issued. There's a whole bunch of things that may have happened that we need to come to terms with, regardless of where we stand on, say the 8th principle that was put forward in May.
And okay to share that reflection. I think it's helpful when people can see themselves in someone else's vulnerability where they're reflecting back. I think that's perfectly okay. I'm just thinking about the amount of times when especially at the beginning of my journey through decolonizing and learning about shared history with our Indigenous family, the amount of reflecting back I had to do, and to have someone to be able to share that with people and for them to say, oh, I did that too. I've done that too. I think it's helpful. I think this is the space where we can mirror that and know that we can get past it.
Yeah. So reflecting then, like as far as an okay thing, reflecting on yourself in this process.
Yes.
Totally awesome. Yeah. So here's how I'm feeling. Here's how I felt. Here's what I noticed coming up in me. That's being engaged in the process. What's not okay is to start to have an intellectual conversation about process that's meant to kind of treat it as though it's something we're about to engage in or are not currently doing. So we are in the process. This is what it looked like when an organization deals with unconscious bias and internalized racism and colonialism that it isn't aware of. It looks like what we're seeing. And it's not something then that we're going to go back to and say, well, we shouldn't do this or we should do that because of whatever process that was or was not followed in some way, shape, or form, whether it was at the annual general meeting or whether it's, in something that's happened more recently in your grassroots communities. We're not looking at process as a way to then say, now, because this thing happened, what our people of color have brought forward to say, hey, we want to be included and we want you specifically to dismantle racism in Unitarianism. It doesn't mean then we get to say what you're asking us to do no longer counts. It doesn't matter because we want this process to feel a certain way for us to feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Which is for sure a characteristic of white supremacy culture.
Yeah.
To want to control it.
And I would say that shows up sometimes in arguing someone's truth, denying someone, arguing facts. It comes up minimizing or dismissive nature in general. I think those are not okay in this conversation. If someone can be reflecting and it is not okay to deny that person their experience.
Right.
In any way.
Right. And essentially what we're looking at then is conversation that is focused on this inward journey that we know we want, as opposed to what is not okay, is using any amount of airtime that is meant to distract in any way from the request that has been brought to us.
Yeah.
So whether it's intellectualizing, whether it's saying, but we could word it this tiny different way or whatever. If people are coming forward and saying, we want it to be worded this way. We want very specifically for it to say dismantling racism. What they're telling us is that is an important part. It's something that we're missing that needs to be given words to. And if it's not, then it's the same as it has been in some way. And so they're asking us to not intellectualize that away, not to come up with reasons to say that the way that it's worded is not good enough, but to say, okay, I hear the essence of what you are trying to communicate to us right now.